Welcome to episode 3 of the Divorced Christian Woman podcast. In this episode, we're asking the question, who am I without him? And listen, that's not just a philosophical musing. That question shows up in the way we make decisions, decorate our homes, show up at work, or even just try to figure out what we like for dinner. Together, Diana and I unpack how so many Christian women lose touch with their identity in marriage and how the journey of reclaiming it is both sacred and slow. We'll talk about trauma, people pleasing, boundaries, and that sneaky programming that tells us we're only worthy if we're useful, quiet, or selfless to the point of erasure. But don't worry, we're not going to stay in the hard stuff without offering hope. This episode is full of real talk, laughter, practical tools, and gentle truth telling to remind you that you matter, that your essence is still there, and that you deserve a life that reflects who you truly are. So let's start with let's talk about why this even feels hard. Like, why? I mean, who am I without him? Aren't we the same person that we were when we were with him? I think sometimes we don't feel that way. I think our identity does kind of change a little bit. So
Yeah,
let's talk about
totally.
that. Um, I think many Christian women lose themselves in their marriage. We kind of touched on that in episode 1.
Yeah.
And but I think we want to normalize this identity crisis because I think it's something that I don't know that everyone goes through it. I mean, you can't say that everyone's going to go through this, but I think a lot of us do. So, why do you think that so many Christian women lose themselves in marriages? Why do you think you lost yourself in your marriage? Or maybe you didn't. I think you did though. I think we talked
Oh,
about
I
that.
totally did. I
Yeah.
totally did. Yeah, I used to have this, like, I guess it was a mantra in my own head. If if our marriage is okay, I'm okay. If our
Yeah.
marriage isn't okay, I'm not okay. And I think as Christians, this idea that like now you're married, now you're one. You when you're looking at it that way, you can totally lose your identity in that. It's like, well, I'm not my own person now. I'm a unit. And it's
Yeah.
like if the units, if half the unit's pulling you down under the water and drowning and you're excuse me, tethered together, where are you going to go? You're going to go under the water and start drowning like you feel like you don't have this option. Or if and it's kind of based on the other person. Then if they're doing great and now we're, above the water and we're having fun up here and it's sunny day, then you're like, yay, this is great. We can totally do it, which I think is why we get on a roller coaster in a lot of these relationships. But as Christians, I think it can feel really threatening to think outside of the lines of what you've been told. And there's so much in the church and Christian literature about our roles. Men and women are different, and here's your role in marriage, and here's their role in marriage, and this is how it works. And if that starts to fall apart, then it's kind of like, well, then if if that's not working, if I'm not rising up as an amazing wife, then who am I? What's my role? I had this experience when, here I am in my early 30s, maybe mid 30s, and my little sister was 15 years younger than me, and she was in college, and I was raised in a Christian home. My parents were divorced, and then she was raised with my dad and stepmom, and that was not a Christian home. And she gave me, I can't remember the title of it, but it was a really popular book that was talking about feminism, and she thought I'd be interested in it. And in hindsight, I think it's like she saw how I was in this structured system of who's a woman and who's a man, and I have to just guess. She never told me, and we actually don't talk anymore, unfortunately, but that she was picking up on what was going on back then, and I didn't see it. I
Hmm.
was lost in it, and all I did
Yeah.
is get every book I could, The Power of a Praying Wife, Love and Respect, Sacred Marriage, all these things that like, oh, I'm supposed to suffer in marriage and suck it up and God will reward me in heaven. And I just need to pray more and I just need to have sex more. I need to do all this stuff. We just get so lost I mean, that's especially people who are in a dysfunctional marriage. You're going to be diving into that. And you get so lost in trying to fix that part of you in that role.
Mhm.
And then what happens if you leave that? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I struggled in some ways with my identity, in other ways not. But I really, and I thought I was never a people pleaser, but I was in my marriage.
Yeah.
In my marriage, I was a people pleaser. And in a way, I was a people pleaser where I wanted everyone to look at me and be pleased at what they saw.
Yeah.
Not that I had to say yes to every volunteering thing, you know? So because, but I was just trying to fit the role. And when that role was gone, then it's like, well, now what? How about you?
I like what you said about, like, the one unit, like your one unit. I definitely saw it that way too, and it was so confusing because it meant that he represented me and I represented him, and there were things about him that didn't were nothing like me. And so it was like I wasn't sure, where did that leave me then? And also the roles in my first marriage, my husband was very much a behind the scenes kind of a person, more of a follower, more of a, like, he would do anything for anyone, if they asked him. But he wasn't a visionary person, he wasn't a leader type. That just wasn't who he was made to be by God. But we were taught in our religious community that that's what he was supposed to be. And then
Right.
I was a natural leader. I love to organize things. I love to initiate things. I was very visionary, had lots and lots of ideas, but I was told, no, 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 that's not what you can do, because you're the wife now. So now you need to just get under your husband and let him lead. The only problem is that he couldn't lead because he didn't, know how, and he didn't like to do it. He didn't want to do it. And so both of us, honestly, sometimes when I look back on that, I'm like, I wonder if our marriage would have gone different if we had been in a completely different environment that would have celebrated who we were and allowed us to be who we were. And then we could have felt comfortable being who we were. But instead, we put pressure upon each other to be what we were told that we had to be, and neither one of us was able to do that well. I mean, we tried. I think we both gave it our best shot, but neither one of us was able to do that well, and it really screwed with our minds, and it screwed with our there were other issues too, obviously, but I think this was a big one. So I just think we were programmed. We were programmed, and so I had to do a lot of deprogramming just to get myself to the place where I could actually file for divorce. And then I still feel like I'm deprogramming. And I talk about my whole deprogramming process in All the Scary Little Gods, which we talked about in the first episode. So that was my journey. But let's talk about what identity is and what it isn't, because it's not your relationship status, it's not the roles that you're playing, it's not your reputation, which we tend to think that that's what it is. It is the essence of who we are. It's who God created us to be, just all by ourselves, apart from anybody else and apart from what other people tell us that we're supposed to be.
Yeah, you know what? This is hard to describe. I'll do my best. One way that I started to understand this for me, because I still get tripped up by this question. Like, oh, it's your essence. Like, which is actually the word I used to describe it when I saw this question. I was like, well, it's kind of the essence of who you are. And then you said it. I'm like, okay, but what does that mean? And so when I started doing work with like cognitive behavioral therapy tools, which I use in my mind renewal work that I do to talk about all the time on my podcast. Um, I I heard someone else describe it like to examine what you're thinking is almost like to pull yourself out of your brain. And then there's this part of you that's like looking in and can examine what you're thinking and think about what you're thinking. And in some ways, I
Meta.
think it's meta. That higher version of myself. This sounds so crazy. All the Christian women listening.
I
Hey,
know.
we're the Christian women too. We're with you. But it's like, but God made us this way.
Yeah.
If he tells us to renew our minds, how are we supposed to do that if we can't have a piece of us that can come out and examine our minds?
That's right. Animals can't do this,
Yeah.
but we can.
So there's this extra other uh, essence part of us that this is our, maybe we want to call it our soul. This is the part I think that runs deep. This is where our passions live, even if we can't totally articulate or understand our own passions. This is where some dreams live, even if we haven't totally fleshed out our dreams or aren't totally sure what they are. They're in there. This being the way God, who God created us to be, and all the fire He put in us, and all the goodness He put in us. That's
Yep.
who we are. And I think it's our journey to uncover that and figure it out. And, for the people listening, hey, we're all divorced women, all divorced Christian women. Most of us probably really struggled to figure that out while we were married because we were working so hard and trying to hold the system together, keep the institution together. And we
Yeah.
lose ourselves in that. At least a lot of us do. So I'm still figuring it out. But yeah, it's meta. That's the answer.
Yeah. 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 I think my identity used to be uh because I wasn't necessarily, well, I think I was a little bit coming out and looking at what I was thinking, but I was so wanting to be whoever I needed to be depending on who I was around at the time, a little bit like a chameleon. And I think it was because I wanted people to be emotionally comfortable because I'm an INFJ. I think that's where that comes from, but because that made me emotionally comfortable. If they were comfortable, then I was comfortable. So then I would try to be whatever they wanted me to be mostly, but I did also have a streak of like, why? And sometimes I would try to get others to back off a little bit and give me some breathing room in the very nicest INFJ way. But when they didn't, then I would feel very resentful. But I'd feel resentful of them, but I'd also feel very guilty that I felt resentful. I just had I had no boundaries, right? It was my own lack of boundaries. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is I just really didn't know who I was. And if I did, there might have been a part of me that sort of knew who I was or who I wanted to be, but I just didn't think it was possible to be that and also be loved. And I really just wanted to be loved. I didn't know that I could actually learn how to provide that love and acceptance inside of myself with the Holy Spirit. I just felt like I needed everyone else to be emotionally comfortable so that I could be comfortable, so that they would love me, and so that also they would be easy for me to love. Right?
Yeah, it
What a
totally makes
mess.
sense. Yeah.
What a mess,
Yeah,
right?
but so many people, we deal with that. I mean, it's in all our relationships, it's in some of our relationships. I think everybody listening can relate to that in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so how could a woman know that she's really disconnected from her identity? And maybe we could talk too about some of those traps to watch out for even after we're divorced.
I think the biggest thing I hear, if we just wanna, like, what's a clue? Or you said what's a small sign that someone's disconnected from their identity? Listen to yourself if you wanna know this is you. In conversation, when you're planning, when you're thinking about your future, when you're asking yourself something, when someone else is asking you something, like a deeper thing about life. If you're frequently saying, "I don't know," I think that's a
Mm,
huge sign that you're disconnected from your identity. And, what do you do when you don't know? Where do you wanna eat? I don't know. Where do you think you'll be next year? I don't know. How do you make decisions? How do you move forward? How do you, like I like the phrase, step into who God created you to be?
yeah.
If you're filled with thoughts of, I don't know. You might not even be saying it out loud, you might just be thinking it, or you might be spinning and not landing on something.
Yep, yep. It can be as simple too as I know people in the forum in Flying Higher have been like, "Well, now I'm in this new apartment or this new home after my divorce, and I don't know how to decorate it. I don't know." Now, some people they know right away. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait to decorate my apartment. I was never able to do that the way I liked to before," and they're just ready to go at it. But others are thinking, I don't even know what I like. I don't even know what colors I like. And they're so paralyzed by making those decisions. And also, we'll see people come in the forum and ask, what should I do? They'll ask coaches or other people, what do you think I should do? Instead of looking inside of themselves and saying, do I know what I want to do? And if I don't know what I want to do, what do I need to address inside of myself so that I can get to the place where I have confidence in making my own decision and being okay if I make a mistake, If I like to, even with my business, I like to say, I throw a lot of spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks, and a lot of it doesn't stick. A lot of it just slides right down the wall and it doesn't stick. But once in a while I'll throw some against the wall and it'll work, and then I run with that. But you got to I'm going to keep throwing the spaghetti until
Yeah.
I figure it out. But I also think just giving credibility to other people's opinions, giving more credibility to the opinions of others than to your own opinion is a huge sign that you're disconnected from your identity.
Mhm.
So, we see this a lot. I definitely struggled with this, but it is something that you can work on, and I notice it now. As soon as I realize, oh, I really respect that person's opinion to the point where I'd probably do what they wanted me to do more than what I would want to do. Actually, you helped me with this even in my last divorce. You would ask me sometimes, you'd say, "Well, Natalie, what do you want? What do
Mm.
you want?" And it always stopped me in my tracks. And I would go, "Oh gosh, I didn't think about that. What do I want?" And then when I asked myself, I would have an answer. And
Yeah,
then I would
because you're like, "What about the house? What about the kids? What about my work? And or what about all," it's like, well, what if we didn't think about what the business needs, what the kids need, or what your soon to be ex-husband needs, and we just thought about, "What do you want?" That
yeah.
yeah. And that's even so, I mean, this is a process. I again, I talk like this all the time, but I think this is all another friend of mine uses the word becoming. I think this is a part of us becoming more of ourselves, becoming um closer spiritually to God, and solidifying that, and I don't know, becoming more like Christ. But that's our journey, right? Is understanding his character and all that kind of stuff. But the word becoming kind of describes us, and if we're always working on it, and that's okay. That's my point. We're always working on it, and that's
Yep.
okay. So if there's some things you're like, I don't know, or what do I want? Maybe you don't know today, but figure it out.
Yeah. I think and maybe you see this too a lot in your coaching, in our group coaching in Flying Higher, there will be a lot of times that someone will come with, they'll have a career, they'll want to make a career move, or they'll want to like make a move within the career, within the job that they have, the current job that they have, they want to make a position move. And they don't know, they're paralyzed by doing that too, because they don't know if they have the right to ask. They
Right.
don't, they're playing small. They don't know if they're worth having that job, even though when they'll tell everything that they've done and what they've contributed to the company. And it's like, oh my gosh, girl, you totally need to, yes, the company needs you to move up to the next level, and you just need to let them know that you're ready and willing to do that. Or or even realizing, I'm in a career that I don't enjoy. I don't like this. And do I deserve to go back to school and invest in myself and getting a different education so I can go down a different pathway in my career? Do I deserve that? I mean, my ex-husband did. I worked to put him through school, but I don't know. Am I really worth it? Do I have anything to contribute? Those are more just signs, I guess, to look for. If you're asking yourself questions like that, or feeling hesitant to ask for what you want or to take up space in the world, then that might be some signs that you have a little work to do on your own identity, and knowing and really feeling comfortable in your own skin and who you are and what you deserve.
Yeah, I think that's speaking to that identity trap that where you're always trying to rise up and take care of everyone else, and you're
Yeah.
putting yourself last. So
Yeah.
it's like you always use the phrase throwing yourself under the bus.
Yep.
So it's like the kids need something. Well, okay, I guess I'll cancel my plans.
Oh yeah,
My
totally.
parents need something. The boss needs something. Okay, I'll guess I'll do my stuff later.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, how does that relate to identity? Is that people pleasing? Yeah, but the your identity gets lost in that because you're telling yourself in a way, I never matter. My stuff doesn't matter. You're not nurturing your identity. You're dismissing it.
Yeah. Even when I said the word deserve, like what you need, understanding what you deserve, that immediately brings up one of my old programmings that says, what? How audacious for you to say that someone deserves something or that you deserve something. The only thing you deserve is to burn in hell forever and ever, and it's only by the grace of God that you're even alive and taking a breath in. You don't deserve anything more than that. That is my programming. So I
Yeah.
can't even use the word deserve without that coming up for me. Now I don't believe that in my adult core self. I don't believe that anymore, but there is always going to be a part of me that's going to bring that thought up and go, I don't know, should you really talk about women deserving anything? Because that seems pretty self-centered, right? And unchristian, but I think that's kind of sad, actually.
Yeah, and I think we miss out on becoming fully who God created us to be, so that all the gifts he's given us, all the things that we're supposed to be going out and helping other people and bestowing wisdom upon them and giving encouragement. We think we do it by saying yes to everything, but then we just end up depleted in all this, like, the idea you have to start a nonprofit or that thing that's going to change the world, or the work you and I are doing, Natalie, where we're helping thousands of women every year to, like, get out of a painful way of living into an empowered way of living. And we can't do that if we don't care about who we are, who God created us to be, um what we value, what matters, and then nurture it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes me think of it's not that we deserve based on like, well, I've done enough good things, so I deserve something. It's even in that song from Wicked, Defying Gravity, she says, everyone deserves a chance to fly. Everyone, we all deserve a chance to fly because we are made in the image of God, because God endowed us with that destiny and with that inheritance. We deserve it because we believe as Christians we deserve that because of God, that God has given that to us as part of our being His children. And
Even you saying those
everyone just,
lyrics gave me
huh?
that gave me chills. You just saying those lyrics gave me chills.
Yeah,
It's incredible. Yeah, I hope that the deserve trigger goes away for you, because you do deserve all of the good stuff, you know? And I know you
yeah,
know that. Um,
yeah. But like I said, it's the thought that, well, no, you have to do things to deserve something. And maybe I haven't done enough. That's always going to be something within me. Maybe I haven't done enough to deserve it. But again, it's not based on what you've done. I just want everyone to hear this. It
mhm.
is, you don't deserve things because of everything you've done. You deserve it because you are a child of the living creator God. All right? That's why. And we are all God's children. Now, whether or not we recognize that and live into that and is going to be the degree that we experience the good feelings that that can give us. Some of us aren't ready to believe that or to accept that yet. And so then we won't get to experience that until we do believe. But that's what you deserve. Everyone deserves that.
Yeah.
No matter how horrible you've been, maybe you were the one that ended your marriage, and maybe you didn't. Maybe you were the one that was abusive. Who knows? I mean, I'm just saying you could have been, and you still deserve a chance to fly because you belong to God, because God created you, and He created you to do good things in this world with your life, to be who, and that all is wrapped up in who you were uniquely created to be, the time in history that you were uniquely placed in. Your unique upbringing could have been abusive, but whatever it was that's been handed to you in your life, your hand of cards, so to speak, play it. I remember someone once told me, you can get a really bad hand of cards in poker and you can still win. You can still win at poker with a bad hand of cards. And I don't play poker, so I don't know how that works, but it sounded good to me. All right. Okay, we're going to talk about how trauma actually can rewire our identity. Because when you've been in survival mode, which many of our listeners have, you build your identity around coping strategies. And then once you're safe, those strategies aren't going to help you out anymore. They actually start to work against you. And so that's when you want to actually do this identity work. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? Does anything come to your mind when I
I mean, the only first thing that came to my mind is, wow, what a big question. And uh like, who are we to answer this? And I know what you do as work, you're totally equipped to answer this because you've helped thousands, probably over 10,000 women or 20,000 women by now who've gone through trauma. For me, it's a lot less. And I don't have specific training in this, but I have the hundreds of women I've coached through trauma in my own experience. And it just really messes with your brain. That's the best way I'd say it.
Yeah.
It's like if you've got a car and the engine's running and it should be going smoothly, and then someone decides, what if we just pour a little grape juice in with the antifreeze? Not a lot, just a little. What will that do? Well, it just starts to mess with the coolant system a little bit. It's still working, but it's kind of messed up a little bit. What if we just drop, some yogurt into the gas tank? What would that do? What if we pinch off this tube a little bit here? Stuff can still get through, but I don't know. So my brain thinks in these weird analogies, but I feel like our brain's trying to function well, think through things, understand who we are, what's our place in this life. And we've got all these little sabotaging things happening. Uh, and that's when we're going through the situations that are creating trauma. But then when you get out of the situations creating trauma, it's not like all of those things are just good as new again. Oh,
Yeah.
everything's now that we took the car to somewhere else, all that stuff stopped. No, this hose was still pinched off for a long time. It's still not functioning properly. Maybe with time, maybe if we massage it or oil it, or I don't know what you do to tubes that are getting all dry and crusty in a car, you probably should replace it. But maybe
Replace
you
it.
replace some stuff, right? And you clean out the antifreeze and put in new stuff. But there's things that have to be done. This is where, like you always say, the analogy breaks down because that's not how our bodies work. But there's the book, The Body Keeps the Score. And so even if we put ourselves in a good place and we're trying to work on our identity, the stuff that happened to us is still messing with us. It's messing with our thoughts. It's giving us physical, sometimes I'm like, my thoughts are fine, but I will see someone and I go into a trauma response just because I see them and
Mhm.
nothing bad is happening. And it messes with my mind. And I can think, well, I'm never going to be better. And something, if I can't heal, something's wrong with me. And what's the point in trying? I'm just going to always be broken like this. And
Mhm.
it can continue to mess with our identity.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you think about my
Well,
analogy?
no, that's absolutely true. And I know everyone is dealing with some kind of trauma in their lives. I like to boil things down to, what is that word in cooking when you boil it down to a not it's not essence. It's like
Oh,
you
distill?
no, there's like a word for what it is that's left after you've boiled it all down.
Yeah.
But anyway, you guys know what if you're a cooker, you know what I'm doing. You
Reduction.
can picture it. A reduction. There you go. You've got this reduction. Okay. So I think that for me, I had to be whatever someone else wanted because that's how you got love. And that's the reduction. The bottom line is we are all looking for love. That means someone who will mirror back to us that we are beloved, that we are okay. And many of us grew up, we had to be a good girl to get love from our family. We had to be cool and say funny things to be loved by our peers. We had to be submissive to be loved by our spiritual leaders. We had to be pretty to be loved by a man. We had to be cheerful and hardworking to be loved by our husbands. We had to be happy and giving and generous to be loved by our friends. We had to be the best mother in the world to be loved by our kids. And the thing that I have learned is that I had to start loving myself. And until I could start giving myself the love that I needed in partnership with the Holy Spirit, I couldn't be myself until I could actually love myself. I know that sounds so cliche. I mean, you hear there's like songs like that, and it sounds so cliche, but that is literally that is the reduction of everything that this human race needs. Once I started loving myself, I could finally be myself. And to the degree that I'm not able to be myself is where I start seeing, oh, there's some areas that I'm really shaming myself. Like I've got these voices in my head, you know the voices that are telling you that you screwed that up and you're not good at this and oh my gosh, you're a terrible mother and you're a terrible grandmother because you're not, doing this, that, and the other thing and all the things. That's not loving ourselves. That's not giving, we would never do that. Well, maybe we would do that to other people, but we would definitely try not to do that to our beloved children or to our, beloved friend or whatever. But we do that to ourselves all the time. So I think tr- that's trauma, but I think part of healing trauma is definitely going to be addressing how are you taking care of yourself, and that's where I love internal family systems. That's been the one thing that's helped me to actually get to know my inner system. And I'm not an IFS trained person, but and I don't even like to think in terms of like I've got all these millions of parts and I know who they all are. I do talk about that in my book, All the Scary Little Gods, and I did kind of break down some of my parts. You get to meet some of them, and they're pretty funny. But um, now I kind of just think I simplify it, and I'm just like, there's a little girl inside of me, a little Natalie, and how am I parenting her? How am I loving her? How am I helping her to be safe? When she feels safe, I actually do pretty well in this world. And when she's feeling terrified and scared and like no one cares about her, that's when I start falling apart. But it is actually my number one job to make sure she feels loved and safe. It's not anyone else's job. It's not my kids' job. It's not my grandkids' job. It's not anyone in my program's job. It's my job.
Can I
So anyway,
compare that to in the beginning? We were talking about how, like I was saying, if my husband's fine, I'm fine. If my marriage is fine, I'm sorry. If my marriage is fine, I'm fine. If my marriage is not fine, I'm not fine. And you were kind of talking about your little Natalie inside of you. If she's good and feels safe, I feel good and safe. If she's not fine, I'm not fine. But wait a second, that's totally in your control. That is the
yes.
place that you can nurture yourself and grow and get yourself more regularly to that place of safety. So I think it's really good news that
Yes.
that you
It's
can recognize that and have that. Oh, we were talking about really good news recently. That is really good news. And
yes, it
because we
is.
can do something about that. Which
Yeah,
here, I know your next question. Let me throw this one to you instead of you throwing it to me. It says introduce the idea of self reclamation, reclaiming yourself, self
yeah.
reclamation as a slow and sacred practice.
Yeah, I think for me this is the idea of coming back to yourself. So not it's not necessarily like becoming a new person. Sometimes we talk about that. We're evolving into the next best version of ourselves. I like to talk in terms of that. I think there's some truth to that. But also, it's coming back to who you already are in your core that maybe you just haven't discovered or gotten to know yet. So, and I think that's going to take some time. But again, it kind of goes back to the whole internal family systems, getting to know yourself inside, learning to love those different parts of you, and they're messy. They're not all amazing. There's a part in me that wants to kill me, that's suicidal, and that's not, so what do I do? Do I shame that part and say, I can't believe that I can't believe that you just want to murder yourself, murderer? No. If you come across like that to your inner parts, all you're going to do, what's that going to bring up in your body? Just a whole lot of shame and frustration. So we want to connect with those parts with curiosity, like, I wonder why I have this part that thinks that I should just be dead. And this part doesn't come up a lot anymore, but it used to come up all the time. And but it's been curious to me that I have this part. And how can I show this part compassion? Like, this part is trying to protect me. This part truly does believe that if I am annihilated, that I will finally be safe and protected. And in some ways, it's true. If I leave all of the messiness of my life, maybe I will feel better. but but also I won't be here to, fulfill the destiny that whatever that is that God has for me here. So I need to settle this part down and also let this part know I've got this. It's going to be okay. We someday we will be gone from this life. But in the meantime, I've got this. I'm going to be your mother. I'm going to take care of you and love you and keep you safe. And then this part doesn't have that big feeling of wanting to end it anymore because it feels like, okay, I've got a mommy, that's going to take care of me. And I've needed that. Honestly, I think we need to be a mother first to our own. And the people that I've done this work in my program in Flying Free and Flying Higher, they have told me that their parenting of their own children has transformed and I can totally say this for my own parenting too. When I've learned to mother myself and be a good mother to me, I have been a far better mother and understanding and more compassionate and more curious with my kids and more connected to my kids. And so this is not just important work just for us. This has it reverberates into all of our relationships, I think.
Yeah, I can't say I always think of it as mothering myself, but I have 2 questions that I regularly ask myself, and I think I started asking my kids this first, and then these 2 things, and then I started asking myself this. So, almost flip, but either way, it helps explore that deeper part of me and also pay attention to me and acknowledge me and validate me just in these 2 questions. I ask myself, "What do you need right now?" So it doesn't even
Mm,
mean anything has to be going wrong in a moment. If I just feel a moment of where it could be a moment where I'm in emotional pain or I'm struggling or I'm panicking, or it could be a moment of boredom, or it could be all sorts of things. But I ask, what do you need right now? And then the follow up question or a question at a completely separate time is, how can I help you? And that did really, I mean, I think I had some good foundations as a mom, but I saw my relationships with my kids all go to another level when I started asking them, "How can I help you?" And I think when we ask ourselves
oh,
that, that opens up a different space inside of us, like thinking of a moment when you're judging yourself, or that inner voice says something nasty like, mine that does, if I make a mistake, I hear this every time. Diana, you're so stupid.
yeah.
And it doesn't take hold of me like it used to. I used to sit with it. But now I'm just like, oh, there's that voice. Now that's not true, Diana. You're not stupid. But what's going on? What do you need right now? How can I help you? And that takes it to a completely different place.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, you know, those are great I think for people who are listening, those are great questions to write down. Maybe we'll put this in the show notes, some questions. There's some other questions that you can ask yourself to help yourself figure out who you are. And maybe Diana, I'll just quick ask you, and then and then I'll give an answer. We can just give it like a one-liner answer, but just to show people like how you might want to journal this. But one of the questions is, so definitely write those two down. What do I need right now? How can I help you? You're asking this to yourself. What did you love as a little girl before anyone told you who to be?
Yeah, this one I'm still trying to rediscover. I loved being silly,
Hmm.
and I haven't quite, ooh, I can feel the emotion come up. I haven't totally gotten back to that yet.
Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. No. Whose line is it anyway? And then I went in person. It's the in-person show is called Who's Live Anyway? It's improv. It used to be a TV show with Drew Carey.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but I just wanna go around being silly. Like, I would make funny faces and do silly dance moves, and I didn't care what anybody thought, and I haven't fully reclaimed that, but anyway. How about you?
Mm.
What did you love as a little
When
girl?
I was a kid, I loved organizing groups of kids, and now look at me. I'm
Oh,
organizing groups of people. I know. I've been doing
perfect.
that my whole life. Yeah. Okay, what are 5 adjectives that describe the woman you want to become? I know this is putting you on the spot, but maybe
Well,
what comes up for
uh,
you immediately?
yes. Um, at peace, strong, kind, compassionate, creative. Those are the 5 that came up for me right away.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. How about you?
The 5 that just immediately came up for me were loving, wise, compassionate, generous, and forgiving.
Mm, yeah, good. So
But
many to
yours was
choose
so good
from.
too.
I know yours are
I'm
so
gonna take
good.
all of yours
I'm like,
too.
I wanna be forgiving too.
I wanna be creative too. Someone said to me recently, "Are you a" was it you? Maybe it was you.
Let me find
They
out.
said, "Are you a creative person?" I don't know remember if you're a creative person or not. No, I think it was someone else who
Oh,
said
that
that to
wasn't
me.
me. I think you're totally creative.
Yeah, and I was like, "I'm pretty sure I'm a creative person."
You're totally
I'm
creative.
like, "I don't think this person knows me very well." Yeah, I didn't think it was you. I think it was someone else. Anyway, okay. Where do you feel most alive?
Huh. Uh,
Like
in the
right
presence
now.
in the presence of all 4 of my kids,
Okay.
which is interesting for that to be
Oh,
the first thing that pops in my mind because,
wow.
um, I'm kind of like, "Great, you're 18, goodbye," "Oh, it's kindergarten, goodbye." I'm always fine letting them go, and when I'm away from them for long periods of time, I don't usually sweat it too much. Though when I did drop my son off in New York last year to move away out of state, that I felt sad for an hour.
Oh,
No, I do still feel sad, but I mean that sad where I was like, I have to cry.
yeah,
And
okay.
then I do miss him and I feel sad outside of that. That was a joke. But yeah, I
Oh
feel
my
most
gosh.
alive when they're all together. So that would have last time would have been Christmas. And then a year ago for Mother's Day, we all went to a professional baseball game together, and that was fabulous. I love those. How about you?
Mm.
When do you feel most
Oh gosh,
alive?
I love that too. I love being with all my kids together too. It's been a couple of years now, but when I think it's when I'm podcasting because I
Mm.
love helping women. I love helping other people, and I love it. Like I love thinking people are having epiphanies and light bulbs are going off and their whole lives are going to change. And I love that. That just makes me feel so happy. And then I also love communicating, whether it's, I used to love singing. I used to sing, and you used to be a singer too. Well, I think you still do sing a lot. Used to sing. I love writing. I love talking. And so podcasting is totally my jam. That's why I'm doing a second podcast and I feel so excited about it and not, drained by it. If I could just podcast and do nothing else, I wish I didn't have to do really anything else. Just podcast and hang out with my kids and grandkids. Like I would just love that. But, I think 2 is probably enough. Okay, so if no one else had an opinion, what would you do differently this week? And or would you do anything differently?
Yeah, actually, this is a great. So this is you're giving these as journal prompts. So everyone take that, do it in your journal. It's a great question, and some of you might be like me, and I don't have anything.
Yeah.
I feel even with the ups and downs, some weeks are great, some weeks are hard. Some days are great, some days are hard because I'm just a human being going through stuff. I just am embracing all of it. I'm like, I love my life. This is the journey. This is what God had in mind for us.
Yeah.
This is living.
Yep.
And um I mean, I have all sorts of ideas about what I could do better in my business or what could I whatever, but I've here's one thing I'm doing differently this week. If no one has an opinion, I'm going to talk on the Divorced Women's podcast because that is one thing, because you said, "Hey, I'm going to start this podcast. You want to come on with me and be my sidekick sometimes?" And I'm like, "Wait, what are you calling it?" I'm going to be announcing to the world I'm divorced every time I'm on this podcast. So if nobody else had an opinion, I would embrace this even more fully. That's what I would do differently.
Wow.
So I'm
Yeah.
working on it. I am embracing this. Bring it.
Oh, good, good. I'm glad. Yeah, and I'm just like everyone's opinion has always been so contrary to mine. I was called well, I won't even say it. I was called names by someone on Facebook, or no, it was on YouTube recently, yesterday. I won't say the names that they called me. It was a Christian. Christians are so so
Hateful.
kind and loving,
Not all.
right?
Some Christians are hateful and many are
Yes.
wonderful.
Yes. So I call them there's some Christians who actually believe in Jesus and follow him, and then there's other Christians who don't. That's all I can say about that. But anyway, yeah, I just feel like, you know what? If people don't like the divorce, people don't, they call us pariahs and they don't like divorced Christian women. Heck, I'm going to do a podcast then called Divorced Christian Woman. Like, why not just put it right there in their face?
Yeah.
Nanny, nanny, boo boo. Call me all the names you want to. All right, we're going to do one more question because I do want to talk about boundaries as an identity building tool, because boundaries are so important, and they do that is really if we don't have boundaries, we don't have, then that's a huge red flag that we're struggling with our identity, because boundaries are basically where we end and someone else begins. And we have to know who we are to know where those boundaries are. So every time you say no to somebody or to something that's violating your values, you are reinforcing who you are. And boundaries aren't mean, like Christians. I mean, I think I know this because women have told me this, that their husbands said, well, you can't have boundaries are not appropriate in a marriage. There are no boundaries in a marriage. What? That is completely a lie. Boundaries are sacred scaffolding. And honestly, if you have two individuals who are well boundaried in a marriage, you've got a great marriage. If you don't, you've got a dysfunctional marriage. That's my opinion.
That's where the Christian stuff we grew up with, I think, kind of sets us up to lose ourselves and lose our identity. Like,
Yeah.
you shall become one. He's the head and you're the body, and you work together and you do what he says, and then it's like, well, but I don't he's doing something that I don't think is right, but I guess I can't decide that. And we just let go of more and more of ourselves. And then I had boundaries in life, but for many years, I had zero boundaries in my marriage. And where I started to regain my identity, this had to be a huge turning point. And we were trying different marriage counselors, as we always did. And we didn't stick with this one very long, like we always did. But he said, I thought we would, because he used to be a friend of my ex-husband's. They were in groups together at church and stuff. But he said to me in a single session, he's like, well, when he does that, is that really how you want to respond? Does that align with what you believe and stuff? And I was like, huh. And then he said, I would like you to read a book. It's called Boundaries by Cloud and Townsend.
Mm,
And I was like, all right, I'll read that. And when I started reading that, I was like, what? What in the world?
yeah.
And they give an example of, like, you have your house in your yard, and then the other person in your life has their house in your yard. And you set up the sprinklers to water your lawn, and then they just take the sprinklers and set them up in their lawn. And you're like, use your water. And they're like, no, I'll use yours. And we're like, I don't know what to do about that. So, okay. And then we just suffer and suffer and suffer. Our lawn dies, and theirs is looking great because we don't have any boundaries. And everything started changing in baby steps. I couldn't do it all at once.
Yeah.
But I'm like, what if I set one little boundary here? What if I set one little boundary here? And that is how I thought of it for a long time. And I do think of it differently now. As I grew in that, and as I was rediscovering my own identity, I was like, as someone was talking to me about values, and I was like, values, what do I value? That is a good question. And I started making a list of the things I valued. And when I knew what I valued, and it could be character traits or it could be like ideas, like I value hard work, I value sobriety, I value honesty, I value cleanliness, I value kindness. So the way people act or character pieces, whatever, for me and for other people. So if I'm like, I value respectful conversations, then when someone raises their voice, I know what to do. I'm going to leave the conversation.
Right.
It's so easy. And
Yes.
when I'm rooted in knowing what my value is, I'm like, this doesn't have to be so hard. I mean, it is still hard to execute boundaries because the people pleasing side of us doesn't want the other person to feel upset or bad about a decision we make. And so we want to placate them to avoid that. So I know there's a lot involved in this, but the stronger you get in your own values, the easier it is to have boundaries. And I like to think of it another way too. If boundaries sounds scary, you can just decide ahead of time how you'll act in certain situations. Like
Yeah.
I've decided ahead of time, if someone raises their voice, I'll exit the conversation.
Yeah. Making that decision in advance helps you feel more powerful because when it happens, then you're like, well, I've already decided what I'm going to do. I don't have to make the decision on the spur of the moment when it's
Yeah,
scary and uncomfortable.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on boundaries and that how that fits in?
Yeah. Um, there is an exercise in the kaleidoscope where you go through and figure out what your core values are. And I remember when I did that exercise and I made this little kind of collage of my core values and put them up, they're like a North Star for me. And I don't remember what they are now, but this is back when I was going through my first divorce. I was like, I need to know what my values are, and I do need to make decisions based on that. I think the more I know and appreciate who God made me to be, the more I stick with what I'm good at and decline being involved in things that I don't enjoy and I'm not good at. And I'm just going to give an example. I became a grandma almost 2 years ago, and I've had to figure out, what that looks like for me and how different it is. And it's okay that it's different, that I'm a different kind of grandma than my mom was, or than my own grandparents were. And like for example, my mom was very involved in her grandkids' lives, their whole lives. She went to each home of her grandkids. She had 3 daughters, so she went to each home every single week. She spent a whole day in each home playing with the kids, and then her daughters, we could go and go do our grocery shopping. That was our errand day for all 3 of us, I think. And so my kids grew up just bonding with my mom, which was beautiful. But then now I'm a grandma, but I have a full-time job, and I also have 4 teenagers in my house right now. So I don't have the capacity to go and spend an entire day with I have two kids who have children. So separate families, and one of my son had triplets. Now, when he had triplets, well, can you imagine what that was like
No.
their first year?
No.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I mean, we were so thankful that they all, survived and that they were born prematurely, but they did really well. But I was going over there once a week in the evenings and bringing them a meal once a week, and I did that for over a year until I had my car accident, and then I broke my wrist and couldn't do anything. But so that kind of shifted things. But I do remember thinking after about a year and a half, no, it wasn't quite that long. It was over a year though, almost a year and a half before my accident. I remember thinking, I don't know if I can do this forever, because
Mhm.
this is really like it was challenging to do that every single week. And then I had the accident kind of decided for me, and then I kind of had to go back and think, okay, what am I willing to do? It took a couple 3 months for my wrist to be workable again. So what do I want to do? What do I want to offer my kids? And by that time, all the kids were my daughter had a baby at the same time my son had his triplets. So they're all right around the same age. Um, and it's so much fun, but life looks different, but I'm not able to be that kind of grandma. And there's a part of me that's like, bad grandma. You're just a bad grandma. Oh, and also the triplets, their other grandmother is their other grandparents. It's an intact couple. They are retired, and they've been able to just help out a ton. So those kids have really bonded with
Mm.
with their other grandparents. And there's a part of me that feel kind of, I mean, I'm so happy for that, for the grandkids and for the other grandparents, but also there's a part of me that's like, oh, I wish I could have that, but I don't have the time to make that happen. I went over to babysit, and the other grand was there, and she said to one of the grandkids, she goes, Natalie's here. Look at Natalie's here. And
Uh-oh.
I didn't say anything, but inside my head, I was thinking, actually, I'm the other grandma.
Right.
But as the kids get older, well, that'll all iron out. But that's it tickled the little, not tickled, like poked at the part of me that feels like, am I really being a grandma? Maybe I'm just being a Natalie to these beautiful children that I love so much, but I really can't. But that's okay. Those are my boundaries. That's not who I am. I'm working full time. I have 4 teenage kids at home, and I can't be that kind of grandma, and that's okay. That's not my identity. That's not
Yeah.
who I am. And I raised 9 kids. I'm exhausted of kids. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I don't really like being by myself with small children. It's exhausting to me, and I think it triggers a lot of some of my trauma, even of being
Yeah.
just raising my kids in the environment that I raised them in and feeling overwhelmed all the time. That can come up a little bit for me too. So, but I love it when all my kids come over and they bring the grandkids and they hang out at my house. Oh my gosh, I'm in seventh heaven when that happens. So, anyway. And
Yeah.
also, here's another thing. I'm sorry, I'm just blabbing here, but let me just say one more thing. I my life is super busy, but I also have health issues that I have had to make a priority because I feel like when we get older, if we don't start taking care of ourselves, working out, doing whatever, walking more, that and those things take time. But if we don't do that, we're not going to last into our 80s and 90s in a way that is, where we can be active and actually be interacting with our kids in the way we probably want to. So even because of those time consuming things, but there's a part of me that's like, well, that's so selfish to go work out.
Yeah, but
Actually, no.
no, no, because we've got to take care of ourselves. These boundaries help us take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
If we don't feed ourselves, if we don't nurture that essence, our identity, and have boundaries to make sure that we're a priority, we will be depleted for everyone else. And that I don't think that's fair. So
Yeah. No, it's not.
I think it's our
Not fair to
responsibility.
anyone.
Yeah, it's our responsibility to
Yes.
have boundaries and take good care of ourselves. And I do believe
Yes.
Jesus expects that of us, and he modeled it to the hilt. If you don't believe me, just go Google how did Jesus have boundaries, and you will find it everywhere.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I think we'll end there, Diana.
Okay,
This
on
was a
me
great
having a little
conversation.
speaking fart. Yes, it was a great
Oh,
conversation. Excuse me. I'm being
we
silly.
there you go. There you go. Fortunately, I do have an editor, so I can edit out but do we really want to
No,
edit out
don't
the
edit out me
silly?
being silly. I want
I don't think
more
so.
that I have never said that that was a moment for me today. That's important. Let that live in
All
cyberspace
right.
forever. Me being
All
silly.
right. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Diana, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, I hope you'll share it with another Christian divorced woman who needs to be seen in her life and to know she's not alone. Also, we are a brand new podcast in this space, and you can help us take off in a couple of ways. One is by subscribing on your podcast app, and two, by leaving a rating and review so the podcast platforms will recommend this podcast to other divorced Christian women and they can find us more easily. Your review will let curious listeners know what to expect and encourage them to give us a try. If this is life giving for you, it also may offer the same hope for others just like you. And if you want more, Diana has a podcast called Renewing Your Mind. And I have a podcast for women of faith still living in their destructive marriages called Flying Free. So be sure to check those out. And finally, if you would like to learn and grow with other divorced Christian women, consider joining me and Diana and hundreds of others in the Flying Higher program. You can learn more and sign up at joinflyinghigher.com.